Hey everyone, welcome to 5-Day Deals Photo Creators Live. I'm Corbin Hebert. That's Trey Ratcliff that you're looking at right there. Hey Trey, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on? Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's cool to chat. Why don't we just jump right into it? Burning Man. Talk to us about Burning Man. You just shared through your newsletter a bunch of the amazing photographs that you captured. I can only imagine that must be just a fraction of what you took. But talk to us about this visual eye candy that is this event. What an experience, a photography adventure, a mind game, I'm sure. But tell us about Burning Man.
Yeah, I take a lot of photos and I take a lot of drugs, and it's just all around a great time. Overall, maybe you see something in my photos, and I try to capture a feeling all the time. That what we try to do as photographers is capture some feeling, some je ne sais quoi, some kind of truth that you can't quite put into words. I think that's what we're sometimes good at. And maybe you sense kind of like a freedom in these photos. Something just feels free and very self-expressive. I mean, not necessarily of me, but of my subjects or whatever I choose to shoot. And I think that's one thing I've learned at Burning Man over the last 8 years. And I was kind of already on this path as a photographer, and I study a lot of Eastern, philosophy, and this whole idea of, not taking yourself seriously, letting go of the ego, and just a freedom to create. And I think this is probably one of the fundamental things that I've come to understand. It's only been reinforced by the whole essence of Burning Man, is that as you let go of yourself, as you let go of the ego, it frees up a tremendous amount of energy that you can use to create. Mm-hmm. Right? And I think sometimes I see, not just in photography, but across all industries, people that take themselves very seriously are always complaining and just not accepting that a lot of their energy gets caught up in just this, this egoic story that they're telling themselves, and they're just very vexed at the way the world is. It's not going the way the story that they've told themselves, the way it's supposed to go. And as they spend all this like angry, upset energy, they don't have much left to create. And so I think when I go through Burning Man, before I went, by the way, I thought, my God, these are just a bunch of hedonistic hippies, right? That they're just trying to show off. And I was totally wrong. What I thought was hedonism was just simply people who are comfortable with their own sense of self-expression. And isn't this what we all want? And I think this is kind of what we do as photographers. We do try to express ourselves creatively, and we try to become comfortable with that process. But when you're out in the desert and you're surrounded around by 75,000 artists and creatives, and they're all just like super cruisy, they're very comfortable with their own sense of self, their own sense of self-expression. It's a very safe place, and you realize, this is great. Why can't everybody be comfortable with their own sense of self-expression in a very like judgment-free zone? We live in this real world where there's judging this and judging that, and it's like that's kind of counterproductive to being a creative, I think. So the whole essence of the place reinforces these tenets that I've come to be known true about life and creativity.
That's unreal. And how do you? It seems like. The amount of personalities that you're surrounded by, all the different nuances of people's lives and the way they express their ideas. Do you find yourself easily overwhelmed? I mean, you said chill, but when I look at photographs, your work from Burning Man, I'm a little bit overwhelmed. Maybe it's a sensory thing that it just looks so intense. And it looks like, that you're always surrounded, even though you're in the desert, you're just always surrounded by people. Do you find that intensity to be true, or is it just my observation of the experience?
There's an intensity, but it's not flagging. It doesn't get you down at all. I think like so much of life is about maximizing all of your sensory input while keeping yourself, delightfully uncomfortable. It's like life is constant change. And as you become comfortable with being uncomfortable, it really eases the path, not just for photography, but your entire life. And so, when you're seeing all this stuff, when your sensorium is having this crazy input all the time, you continue to ratchet up what you're willing to accept, how much stuff you can come into your eyes and your ears at once. And the more you expose yourself, there's all these, psychological analyses of these sorts of things. That the more you expose yourself to things that are like uncomfortable, or the more you put yourself out there, not only does it open you up more, but you become more creative, you become more accepting, and just basically life gets better. People that close themselves up, or they have like a very closed experience of life. Sometimes it's hard for these people to create, or to even like accept, or like be. I think we're all supposed to be like kids, right? You just create and you share, and you make the world a better place. You kind of help bring consciousness and peace to the world through your creativity. This sounds a bit solipsistic, but I really think it's up to us, like the artist of the world, to save the world, because we do bring like a positivity and a grace, and it's up to us, right? And so I think this kind of reinforces this idea. And when you see like 75,000 people around you doing this kind of thing, it's real. It's not just like, a bunch of people aiming crystals at dolphins and hoping it saves the world. It's like a real tangible thing.
Yeah, yeah. So photographically, how do you, it looks like the decisions that you have in front of you are almost endless. How do you go about making the decision on, this is what I'm going to photograph, this is how I'm going to do it? Do you have any pre-planning before you show up, or when you're on site, are you making decisions, or is it as organic as it sort of sounds?
Good question. It's very free flow with a bit of preparation. Now, there's many different kinds of photographers, right? And I really admire like people that can shoot models, or a set situation where they can set up people. I don't know how to do that. I never know how to tell people how to stand, or like hold a martini glass like this, or do lighting like this. My mind doesn't really work in setting up a scene like that. But I'm okay with that. But what I do like to do is I like to go out and find interesting organic things that are happening around me. And there's so many interesting organic things happening around you all the time. So I use one of two, we can get a little technical here. So I use one of two cameras. I either use a Sony A7R Mark III. That's my favorite camera, and that's the one I take out when it's not too dusty. Or I use by the way, none of these people are sponsors. I bought all these cameras. Fuji XT2 or something like that, because that one's weatherproof and that can stand up with everything.
Yeah.
And then I just basically jump on my bike and go out and kind of open my heart to the universe and see what I discover. There's always just groups of people doing interesting things. There's parties. There's pieces of art way out in the desert. Like I'm gonna ride 5 minutes out into this like white desert and see what I find, and you end up finding something very interesting. So it's really an organic thing for me. That doesn't mean, look, you're only seeing the best photos. I think this year I took 8,000 photos, and I only published like my favorite 50 or so.
Yeah.
So when I find an interesting area, like, okay, here's some people like doing some kind of semi-nude yoga situation while another guy's pouring champagne into a girl's mouth. I might get on my bike and shoot low because I like to get people above the horizon, and I might kind of like circle around them and get like 20 photos. And because I know one of them is going to come out interesting. They're all interesting, and then it's fun to go back and pick like the most interesting one. I enjoy that entire process, and then I get to post-process it, add some filters, add a certain, je ne sais quoi.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself in these moments where the setting is the setting's pretty good, the moment is fantastic, and you're like, man, it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and this sun is kind of killing it, in a bad way? Do you ever find yourself kind of like, I wish we could wait 8 more hours?
Well, I've come to embrace the direct sun. I'm not so against it because you can do so much in post to kind of fix that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There's so many amazing tools available nowadays for fixing stuff in post. And, when you have direct sun and it's bright outside, it's much more contrasty. You come up with a much more kind of contrasty shot than you would otherwise. Yeah. There's just great stuff happening all the time. And I think, I I never complain like, oh, I wish this was like that, or I wish it was this time of day. If there's interesting, beautiful stuff happening around you, it doesn't really matter the time of day. If you're in the right place at the right time, it's perfect. Now, that doesn't mean that it's always perfect conditions. Sometimes the conditions are just shit, and I don't find anything interesting, and I can't do anything. So, you know, sometimes I'll go 3 or 4 hours with no interesting shots, but you keep going at it. I think so much of life is about like just showing up with good enthusiasm, and that gets you through any situation.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of enthusiasm, so I'm actually going to jump over to the message board because people are asking, you know, Burning Man questions. So let's jump in. Are you afraid? I'm not afraid.
No.
So you mentioned switching cameras based on dust. So is dust management a big part of the effort of going out and shooting? Kind of going, is it going to be? Do you always have both on you, or are you leaving one back at the hut, kind of thing?
Yeah, I usually ride around with the Fuji. Just I'm holding it with one hand, and I've got my electric bike in my left hand.
Yeah.
And so I'm shooting as I go, kind of run and gun. And then in my sling bag, I have my Sony.
Okay.
So they're kind of sealed away back in there. Actually, I've gotten so many great questions like this and others. I have written a Burning Man survival guide, how your camera and you can survive a week of Burning Man. And so it's a really beautiful long document that goes into all the details of all my equipment and tips and tricks and that kind of stuff.
That's cool, because I imagine protecting your gear is either protecting it or holding it lightly might be the best approach.
Yeah, I think people freak out about it a little too much. One of my best friends, Renee, he's my roommate. He has been using his Sony A7R Mark II for the last 3 years. Never had a problem. He just takes it out. He doesn't even tape it up. Never had a single problem with it. We've been in lots of sandstorms, all that kind of stuff. So I think people are a little too precious with their equipment. I mean, this stuff is tough nowadays. And if it gets dirty, you just go take it to the camera store and get it cleaned. And then it's good to go again. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, that fine dust is always exciting to see it where it gets lodged. What's the process of getting press credentials for Burning Man? I've never actually heard that question before. Press credentials.
Well, I have a whole thing about this. I used to work with the press there like I've been there 8 years, probably 5 years ago, but I've stopped doing that. You don't get anything extra for it. You put a little tag on your camera, but honestly, not everyone there is taking pictures, but almost everyone. Yeah. And I would say 80% of people are using an iPhone or an Android phone, and 20% of people are using a DSLR like me, and or a mirrorless camera. And Burning Man has a very unusual policy about photography that I don't agree with. I'm working with their general counsel to try to make it more open. Like, for example, okay, Burning Man owns all the photos, or owns most of the percentage of the photos that you take, okay, which I think is fundamentally immoral, okay? But like, you see these giant statues out there, these beautiful pieces of art that are either made by a single sculptor or a whole team of sculptors, and these take all year to make. They're very expensive, they might cost $50,000 or $100,000 to make. Yeah. And then afterwards, they can go sell it to a municipality, like the city of Reno might buy this giant, beautiful structure for like $1 million. Now, those artists get to keep all that money. Burning Man doesn't get any. But as a photographer, we're like lesser class citizens. Burning Man owns all of our photos. So I'm making the case behind the scenes. I thought about doing an open letter, but I didn't want to be like an asshole and do like that. So behind the scenes, I'm working with a lot of the other popular Burning Man photographers to say, listen, we are artists just like those sculptors and the builders and the other creators are artists. Mm-hmm. We're no different. So we should be afforded the same rights as everyone else. So anyway, I don't worry about the press. I don't worry about any of that kind of stuff. I'm kind of my own press machine anyway. I don't need to give it to these other press people. Yeah. It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. I'm trying to fight the good fight for us photographers.
Yeah. Champion the cause. That's great.
Yeah.
So here's a post-processing question. Why does the color of the final image in Aurora look different when I open it in Lightroom? So let's go technical in a second.
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I don't know. Maybe if maybe your Lightroom is a applying a different color space to it? That is a super tech deep question. That's probably a good one to ask. Send an email to our team. We're partners with Skylum on this. We launched Aurora HDR, I think 4 years ago. And then last year we won Apple's Mac App of the Year, which is pretty cool. We keep improving it. And so email our guy Stu at stuckincustoms.com, and we'll get to the bottom of that for you. We talk with the Skylum engineers every week because I notice little picadillos too. I use it all the time, and we'll get that figured out for you.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Hey, let's jump over to something we were talking kind of before we hit before we went live about your last adventure. So post Burning Man, you grabbed a backpack and went for a really, really long walk. Why don't you tell everyone about where you went on your walking photo adventure?
Yeah, so there's this gentleman who's one of my intellectual heroes. His name is Kevin Kelly. He's kind of a philosopher, technologist, futurist. He's the gentleman that founded Wired magazine, and he has about 3 awesome TED Talks that really influenced me early on about the way I did my blog. It's many, many books where he talks about AI and everything. So he's like, I have like only 10 heroes and only 2 or 3 are alive. And so he invited me to go walk about 150 kilometers, a hike from Portugal to Santiago de Compostela. This is the Camino, the Portuguese way. And so it was me and him and 8 other people, all like philosophers and scientists and authors. So for this entire hike, we were only allowed to talk about philosophy and science the entire time. So it was this very like intellectual and physically rigorous walk, but it was fantastic. And so along the way, I had like this cool little 360 camera. I use this thing called an Insta360 camera, does video. And I would just hold it in front of us while we would talk. And, you know, there's a lot of bloviating. We didn't solve any of the world's problems, but it was certainly, you know, a fun thing. And I took probably about 1,000 photos along the way. I don't know if I got any good ones. I'm still going through them.
Yeah.
But really, it was about the talking and stimulation. I actually find that, like, I get inspired by things outside of the photography world. And this really informs my approach to photography, my subject matter, and this kind of thing. So I find these other, you know, these disparate avenues to be intellectually stimulating.
Yeah, and quite the juxtaposition from the photographic efforts at Burning Man, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. I love this idea of constantly throwing yourself to new environments. And I before I went, I was worried, like, I'm an old man. Can I walk? You know, 150 kilometers. So I did practice hikes here in New Zealand ahead of time, and like I wore a really heavy backpack because like I don't want to be the weak link in this chain. So I was very nervous that I wasn't going to be able to physically do it, but it turned out just fine.
That's awesome. How long did it take you?
It took about 8 days total. I think we averaged I don't know, anywhere from 15 to 35 kilometers a day up and down these. They weren't mountains or anything. They were just kind of hills. But we were so busy talking, like for 10 hours a day, that it just kind of floated right by. It was nice.
That's cool. Did you guys experience any crazy weather, or was it all pretty basic stuff?
No, it was really cruisy. We get going before sunrise, and it was always kind of foggy. And then, you know, there's this, the Spanish have this siesta, and now I know why. Because between 2 and 4, it's like blazing hot. Yeah. And that's saying, I grew up in Texas. I know what blazing hot is. And you just can't do anything. So you just kind of lay around, you know, like a dog for 2 hours, and then have some snacks and some beers. And then you get back on the road, and then you finish your walk and get in by dinner time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So speaking of traveling, how do you, I'm curious about how you approach sort of the scouting effort. When, you know, if you show up, you know, relatively informed, or you show up somewhere where you've already been, you know, in times past, but you know you want to kind of prep something you want to photograph. How do you approach the scouting effort? Aha,
good question. I've changed how I do this over time. I used to have a list, a written list of where I wanted to go. And then I discovered Pinterest. I was like, this is awesome. And I spend quite a time on Pinterest, and I have a board called like, oh, the places I can go or something, you know, sort of like this dream board. And, you know, I'm a travel photographer or whatever, and I'm lucky enough not to need clients when I travel, so I can just kind of pick where I want to go. And when I started doing travel photography, I thought, okay, there's like 100 bucket list places to go. And I was traveling a lot. I thought, oh no, I'm gonna run out of places. But the opposite happens, because the more you travel, the more you realize there's all these places that no one's ever heard of. And I think photographers, we commonly see the same kind of travel-y photos, like those are the only places to go. There's not. That's just scratching the surface. There's 10,000 more places that no one's ever heard of. You know, you'll go, like I'll be the only white guy that's been there in 10 years or forever. And so anyway, I use Pinterest to kind of like find these places that I've never seen before. I'm like, where is that? And I do a little bit of research, and I kind of find, like, during the day, I might go to 2 or 3 hot spots that I know ahead of time, and I leave the rest of the time just to organically like wander the streets, get lost, meet some random guy who wants to take me to some house for a meal. I'm like, let's go, jump in the car and find out what's going to happen. So I'd say like 20–30% is planned, and the rest is just organic and see what happens.
Right. Yeah. You just make sure your medical evacuation insurance is up to date, and you get in the car.
That's right, because I got to get skyhooked out of there.
That's right. So here, there's just, you know, questions everywhere. So one moment, just some curating on the fly. This is fun. We'll jump to a technical. Do you use, Russ wants to know, do you use bracketing during HDR conditions during a midday shot? Wow.
Good question.
Bracketing.
Well, with the new Aurora HDR 2019, which just came out last week, we no longer really require bracketing. So I would say 60–70% of my shots are just a single RAW, which seems to work well. It can also take a single JPEG, by the way, but a RAW is a bit thicker and there's more information in a RAW than a JPEG. The time that I'll use bracketing is if it is like the middle of the day, and there's just some very dark stuff in one part of the photo and super bright stuff in other parts, then I might do a little bracketing. The other situation is, like, let's say I'm shooting right into the sun, okay, like it's sunrise or sunset, you know. In that case, I might do a little bit of bracketing. You don't have to. I think a single RAW looks good, but it does give you a little more options later on. I think, you know, this is a good thing as a photographer to have options. I think it's fine. Some photographers say, like, oh, you got to get it right in the camera, or you're not a real photographer. I find that to be a little condescending, honestly. That's fine if that's what they want to think. But, you know, I think it's good to have options, right? So just go ahead and blast out a few brackets, and then when you get back, you've got the options. And to me, not that I need to, you know, justify this kind of behavior or anything, but remember your retina, the two retinas you're born with, they're super sensitive. They're way more sensitive than your, you know, multi-$1,000 camera, or even your, you know, $15,000 medium format. Your retinas are better. That's all there is to it. And the only way you can replicate the power of your retinas often is to get a dark shot, a medium shot, and a bright shot, and then glue them together later using something like Aurora. And so I think this is just a kind of a fun way to take photos.
Yeah. So bracketing is now sort of, are you saying that you're bracketing less often than not now?
Right. I would say that I only use brackets 20 or 30% of the time.
Okay. Wow.
I used to be 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Now it's less.
Interesting. We've got a few people asking about your thoughts on Luminar versus Lightroom, and are you using both all the time? Are you favoring one more consistently? Give us the Luminar versus Lightroom trade download.
Yeah, you know, I have, with Adobe, I have sort of a hate-hate relationship. And I mean, I honestly don't know what these guys and gals at Adobe are doing. They've got a team of 1,000 engineers, and they must take 600 of them and say, all right, you guys need to add code and make Lightroom slower. You other 400 just fix bugs or something, right? Yeah. I don't know. They got so many smart people. How can Lightroom be so slow? I've got fast computers. I know what I'm doing. Sometimes you click a preset and you just wait. And it's just moving around, looking at something full screen, zooming into 100%. It is just, it's like slower than molasses and waiting on Christmas. I don't know what those guys are doing. It's just, it infuriates me.
How do you feel? Just be honest. Don't hold back.
Now, compare that to the panacea of Luminar. Now, that thing is fast, it's elegant, and at the very basic level, it's got 3 things that I like better than Lightroom. One, of course, is speed. It's just fast. 2, it has layers. Oh, what a concept, layers. And so you can do all kinds of much more powerful stuff than you can with that little brush in Lightroom. And the third thing is it has about 3 times as many tools as Lightroom, right? It's got all kinds of stuff like, it's got this thing called image radiance that can kind of make part of your photo glow. It's got this cool thing called sun rays, the sun rays filter. And so you pop it on a bright thing like a sun, it makes sun rays come out. You can randomize or make them. It's just super fun. And recently we released a set of presets called our festival presets based on Burning Man. And we put them out for Lightroom and Luminar. It's the first time we've ever done both. And people just love the Luminar one better because it's just faster, and you get to see giant thumbnails. Oh, here's another great thing about Luminar. You see a thumbnail of the preset down on the bottom, and then it has a slider on it. So if you don't want 100% of the preset, you can just slide it down to 75 or 50%. I mean, it's a simple concept, but again, Luminar is running loops around him, and now they're announcing digital asset management, and it's got rolling thunder. They're coming on strong to Adobe, and Adobe's in a weak position. I want a big competitive market for us, and nothing's really been competing with Lightroom for a while.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Paul has a question. How does Trey split his mind between shooting photos and processing them? So do you just wrestle your muse to the ground, or do you make it your bitch on both cases?
Oh, no, I'm just in harmony with both. I love shooting as much as post-processing. I think of the initial photo as just sort of a sketch, right? I just want to capture as much light as I can, and I want to get my composition right so it kind of makes sense. Because that kind of stuff is really tough to fix. Yeah. And then I kind of just put that on the shelf, and then I know that someday I will process it. I don't think it's done until I fully processed it. And then also, I don't really think it's done until I've shared it, right? Yeah. I feel like that's the alpha to omega of the creative process, right? You have a concept, you work on that concept, you're full of self-doubt for a while, but you have faith in the original idea. Finally, after blood, sweat, and tears, you end up with theta, right? Yeah. And then eventually, like, you share it, and then it becomes to the omega.
Yeah, yeah. The Jesse has a question. Where's the one place you haven't had the chance to photograph that you still want to? One place, you probably have a long laundry list, a Pinterest board growing, I would bet. But what's a place in the world that stands out as somewhere you just would love to get to still in the near future?
There are a ton of places. I would love to go shoot in space. I think that would be fun.
There's a rocket for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to do that Dear Moon thing. Gosh, I don't know. There's just so many beautiful places around the world. I would like to go spend more time doing long train rides through India, northern India. Mm-hmm. I love the Indian culture and Indian food. Also, this is kind of a fun thing that I haven't done enough of. A few years ago, I took my family, my wife and 3 kids, on a train trip through southern India. And I think we were on a train for 10 days. You kind of live on the train. And it wasn't that expensive or anything. And then you end up rolling into these little towns. And, you're the only white people there. and all these villagers are coming in from all over India to like some temple. It's there one time. It was so cool to take my kids there, and then like the Indians, the Southern Indians, they would come up and they would see my daughter and they would like stroke her face, not in an aggressive way, but like, wow, you know, what kind of creature are you? We haven't seen anything like this. And they were just, it was amazing. It was so great for my kids to see. We volunteer like at orphanages and other places, because you know, kids today they're spoiled, right? Sometimes we take them into Starbucks and then the girls start to cry because they can't get what's behind the glass. We're like, do you guys know how lucky you have it? And so it's good to get out into the real world and see how most of these billions of people live, and let you realize like, hey, look, you know, life is really more about minimalism. You have yourself, your family. It's not about the shit that you buy or what you own or any of that, or what people think about what you own or any of that kind of stuff. It's life is a simple, beautiful thing. You know, I think we know this as photographers, and we want to try to communicate this to people that are not creatives. Yeah.
Where do you think digital photography is going? Is it? I'm curious to get your, you know, if you've been, I'm not sure, you know, all your meditating, I'm not sure you necessarily meditate on this exactly, but, you know, given the fact that technology has always, you know, played a big role in your creative process, I'd love to get a sense of where you think this whole thing is going. Are our sensors going to get bigger and more megapixels, or do you think there's something different?
Right. Well, I do think about this stuff a lot, you know, and I think you probably heard me talking about earlier, my love relationship with Kevin Kelly, who is this sort of futurist technologist about where things going. And he has, you know, several essays on this idea of like, what does technology want? Like, as if technology itself is somewhat sentient and it is going in its own direction, whether, you know, on its own accord. And about 5 years ago, I wrote this super controversial article on my blog, Stuck in Customs, and I said, you know, DSLRs are going to be dead. Everything is going to mirrorless, right? And my God, the hate comments I got on that, because people are so serious about their equipment, like, you could take my Canon DSLR out of my cold, dead hands. And they're not kidding, they're serious. They get so angry about this stuff. I'm like, look, it's clear. It's clear that mirrorless cameras are going to be able to do more. They're going to look just as good in many cases. There's going to be a few edge cases where DSLRs are good, but those are kind of edge cases. You know, they're going to end up like Lionel trains and these collectible things in these little Japanese shops. But anyway, like looking forward from here, I think the future is clearly mobile phones. This is the Pixel 2 phone. I just ordered the Pixel 3 today from Google. Not a paid sponsor, paid full price for it. But you know, my degree, not that this means I'm right or anything, but my degree was computer science and math. So I really think about this kind of stuff intensely, like what's happening with Moore's law, machine learning, AI, what's happening on the cloud. So when you take photos with this, probably I can see in 2, 3, 4+ years, I'll only be using something like this, is that when you take a picture, you're just going to be grabbing a little bit like a movie, like a video file for like, you know, a second or two. And it's going to capture 1,000 frames at 12 megapixels each. And then all this stuff is going to go into the machine learning AI, some of it to the cloud, and it's going to assemble a scene for you that you can then play with in post however you want. You can pull focus. You can have all the dynamic light. You can have a little motion scene. It can extrapolate what's going to happen. So you're going to have so much more power in pulling this stuff and sending it off to the Google Cloud to process for you. You just have, again, to me, having options is great as a creator, because then you get to look through all the options and choose what is the most artistic and the most meaningful. Mm-hmm. And if you use equipment that limits your options, I don't know why you would choose to do that unless you're just trying to make a point.
Right. So do you think then the role of the photographer in the future will really be almost exclusively about composition and about subject matter, and that sort of all the other stuff will just be that the digital gods will take care of a lot of it?
Yeah, I think a photographer's job is always, for me personally, is about storytelling and inspiring. And we're really good at that, you know. We think we're just taking pictures, but we accidentally become pretty good storytellers. We accidentally inspire people along the way. And the equipment it's easy, right? I mean, there's really not a lot of difference currently between this and my Sony camera, okay? Sony camera could do more stuff now, but it's about to catch up. So this is just a tool in our hands, right? The most important tool is in your cabeza, it's in your brain. This is the tool that matters. People get so caught up on these message boards about lenses and micro four thirds and all. The whole industry is there to make you think like that stuff's important. The real important stuff's in your brain. All right, this is just a tool that does my bidding. You see, so this is where things are going. You're going to be able to capture the scene with this, and then go into post, and you can do what kind of processing you want to tell the artistic storytelling story that you think is important.
Yeah. Do you feel like do you feel like photographers embrace the role of the storyteller the way they should? I mean, I think we can both agree that there's a lot of distraction out there, whether it's from, you know, technical gizmos through to, you know, people can spend a lot of time in editing their work and not actually sharing it, not actually saying anything important at the end of the day. Do you think that photographers are ready to be the storytellers that the world wants of them, or do you feel like they're sort of people are going to get weeded out pretty quickly once technology takes care of a lot of that stuff?
Yeah, I think there's two forces at work that work against photographers and artists finding their own voice. One, photography is often attractive to very clever people, right? People who are very analytical, very technical, you know, kind of type A people that like to analyze a situation, break down all the components, and then figure out the optimum, most efficient situation, okay? So this is very left-brained analytical mode. And photography has so many options for these kind of people, right? They can talk about lenses and you know, depth of field and megabytes and just like you name it, right? And there's all these message boards and websites where people can do that because left-brain people feel really comfortable in that area. They can analyze stuff, they talk with the geeks, and they can talk about all that kind of stuff. That's a very safe place for them. The unsafe place is the other side that can't be analyzed. It's sort of the dream world, right? It's where you're just creating and telling stories, and you're way outside of your comfort zone. So that's, I think, a little bit of an insidious thing about the photography industry is it plays a little too much to get people into this technical vortex of no escape.
Yeah.
The other thing that's working against it is people's egos, where they are very worried about what other people are going to think about them. You know, maybe all their old friends and family from high school or their hometown, they know them as this very like technical kind of person or someone that's very analytical. They've never really seen them, you know, express themselves. You know, not like you have to be a great actor on stage like in the Book of Mormon and do singing and dancing, but even just it could be scary if you've never like opened up your heart and said something and attached it to your photo, or telling something that you think is beautiful and interesting. Maybe you're wrong and you're worried how people are going to judge you and this kind of stuff. And that's just your ego telling you that you're not good enough. You know, people are completely obsessed now with likes and comments. People think like, oh, if I don't get enough likes and comments, then they will not think that my photo is valuable. And they transpose that, and then they think, well, if they don't think my photo is valuable or my storytelling is valuable, then they don't think that I'm valuable, right? This is a common connection that the ego is trying to tell you to make, and it's ridiculous. Like, I'm only telling you what you already know. You're already a valuable human being. Just by existing and just being there, you're already as valuable as any other human being. And so people's fear that maybe they're not valuable, this is just a sad cycle that goes on in people's brains, and you can choose to break it anytime you want to.
Yeah. All right, cool. Let's, here's a fun one for you. Randy's got a question about Google+. what are your thoughts on Google shutting down Google Plus? And what do you think will be the state of social media going forward? Ooh, how was that for a zag? You like that? I just left you hanging out there with your creative muse and your wonderings, and now, boom, Google Plus, go.
That's a good one. In fact, I just wrote a very long-form blog post today about it on Stuck in Customs, but I'll kind of summarize here. So Google has been a ghost town for the past 3 or 4 years. I could see it plateauing a long time ago, and I've really spent almost no time on there. We have an automated system that takes my posts from other places and puts them on Google Plus every day anyway, because there are still a few people around. Yeah, I think they really screwed up, you know, obviously. When they saw, here's what I think they should have done, and then I'll talk about the current state of social networking. I think when they saw the growth line plateau, because they were trying to compete with Facebook, to me, I thought one of the greatest things about Google was the photos and the photo sharing. Of course, I'm a photographer, so I'm obsessed with photos, but I thought that was the coolest thing. Anyway, at that time, they could have decided, like, let's not compete with Facebook, let's compete with Instagram, okay? Because Instagram at the time had about only 500 million users, but Android had an installed base of 1.5 billion users. And if they had chosen to take the photo taking and editing experience and add one more step to it, the sharing to your feed, if that was not like an app that you downloaded like Instagram, but it was part of the OS, then they could have really taken Instagram by storm. Unfortunately, they didn't do that, and they just kind of like let it fizzle out of control. Because remember those early days of Google Plus was just like it was like a total and utter joy to use a social network, right? We may not remember what that's like because
it felt organic at the time. It actually felt very comfortable.
Yeah, it felt like a very open, safe place to be a creative. And now we're stuck with basically Instagram and Facebook, right? And I'm losing a lot of faith in Instagram because you can buy, you know, thousands, tens of thousands of followers, hundreds of thousands of followers. By the way, I've never bought a follower. You can buy likes, you can buy comments, you can even buy custom comments. And the thing is that one of our partners in travel is the Ritz-Carlton, okay? And so I end up at lots of different Ritz-Carltons for these luxury travel-y things, they're a great partner. I love those guys. But sometimes I end up there with like other influencers, right? These Instagram influencers. And sometimes I meet these people, I'm like, and there's just hollow. There's no substance. There's just a hollowness, a lacking. I'm like, what's going on? How does this person have 300,000 followers? And I look at the photos and they're not that great. By the way, having good photos on Instagram doesn't matter anymore. Everyone takes good photos. That's not a difference maker. Yeah. And so I start looking at these people. I'm like, how do these people have so many followers? And then there's a website you can use that I found that you can analyze their follower growth, and you can clearly see when they buy followers and they buy comments and all this kind of stuff. It's clear. And so I don't really trust Instagram. And when you start to lose trust in the infrastructures around our lives, it just kind of makes you want to give up. Like, I think a lot of people don't trust maybe the infrastructure of some governments around the world. And we start using these social networks. If we don't trust these infrastructures, I mean, what's going on, you know? And so I think it's kind of rotten what's going on out there. And then I don't think Facebook is that great because people are just getting angry, you know, about like their life is shit because of this other group, and they get stuck in this echo chamber. And so there's not like a happy place for social networking now. I still kind of use Instagram. I guess that's kind of what I use. I'm on all of them. I'm on all of them. I like Pinterest. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what the hell's going on. But I hope someone comes to save the day.
Do you think the founders of Instagram departing and going off to, I mean, they haven't said what they're going to do. We probably won't hear from them for a year or two. But do you think that they're likely to come up with something interesting, or are they just going to count their money?
I don't know. I hope so. I know Mike Krieger, one of the co-founders. We actually did some stuff together before Instagram, and we were always in communication. And these guys are really good-meaning guys. And actually, I don't think Instagram is evil. I don't think anyone there is evil. I do think they would like to have a clean system. I don't know if they'll make something else or not. And you know, they know about all these fake followers, fake comments, fake likes, and you know, last year I think there was $1.1 billion spent on influencers, and a lot of it, hundreds of millions of it, went for fraudulent things. And so the question is, since Instagram knows about it, I know they know about it, are they complicit? Or are they complacent? And maybe it's just such a big beast now that not even strong CEOs can control it. You know, it's just this thing of its own. And so, yeah, maybe those two founders can go off and start something else. Probably not. You know, when you have these golden handcuff agreements, right? They left as soon as the golden handcuffs were off. They have an extended contract that they can't start a competing thing for like,
oh, I'm sure,
5 years. So
yeah.
But maybe someone else will make something better.
You know, maybe the future is analog. Maybe the future is to meet in the desert.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so, because maybe we might wait for AI to clean up all this mess that's out there, but that won't be for 4 or 5 more years. Yeah, I don't know.
You should write a blog post about that right now and see how it goes. Hey, so in the bundle, 5-day deals photography bundle coming up in a couple of days, you guys, you've put in a couple of your courses, which is totally fantastic. And one of the great things about the bundle event is everyone gets together. We've got 37 plus contributors all sharing their great photo tools and resources and tutorials and widgets and gizmos and all that great stuff. And we're going to we're going for $100,000 for charity, raised in just 5 days, which is totally cool. But why don't you take a moment and tell us a little bit about the 2 courses that you've shared that are going to get given to all the bundle customers.
Yeah, you bet. We love you guys over at 5-Day Deal. I think I was friends with Griffin back when this wasn't even a thing yet. And I love that you guys give so much money to charity. That's good stuff. I know make a lot of people happy with that. And so we put different stuff every year. We have a lot of stuff in our store that we put out there to our fans. But this year we took our two best things that we made and we gave them to this bundle. These are 2 video tutorials each with a set of lessons, you know, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. One is called Beginning Photography, and the other is all about drone photography and videography. And you know, I live here in New Zealand, and we really try to up our video game. So we have a professional video crew that kind of followed me all over New Zealand as I filmed both of these things. So you see me on location, and I'm talking about what I'm trying to accomplish in these different lessons and the point of it. And by now you can kind of tell the way kind of unconventional way I speak, but I hope I eventually get my point across, especially with tangible, actionable items. And yeah, and so honestly, I find that I never made a tutorial about beginning photography. Like, what do you do as a total beginner? And I really feel that most photographers still feel like they are a beginner, right? Or they feel like, hey, everyone else knows what's going on except for me. I'm still trying to figure out what all the little buttons on my camera do. And so I basically kind of calm people down. Say, look, you don't have to know 100% of the functionality of your camera. Like 10 or 15% is all you need to know. So I kind of just show you the basics. And then we start going, you know, faster and faster and faster. And then towards the end of it, we get into some intermediate and advanced stuff. So even people, this is great for, if you already know how to use your camera, that kind of stuff, jump ahead to lesson 4, 5, and 6, as we talk about, you know, landscape, interior, portraits. I show post-processing. I show stuff about HDR. A lot of my tricks I do with post-processing. So that's in the beginning photography tutorial. And the other tutorial, the drone one, again, I start from the beginning. I assume you've never flown a drone and you're scared to death. So we go through all that kind of stuff, the basics of how easy it is. I go through different kind of drone models, like which one should you choose, which one's right for you. Then there's a whole lesson talking about drone photography, which to me is currently the most interesting and exciting way to take photos, because it's incredible, you know, when you're just like, you just get up 50 feet in the air, it's a totally different perspective. And it's kind of a mind buzz for me to think, you know, forever we've always had the camera like really close to our head, right? But that's an arbitrary location for the camera. It doesn't have to be close to your head. Now the camera can be anywhere in this tremendous 180-degree, you know, hemisphere around you that extends like 2 or 3 miles around you. And so now, and you're instantly mobile, right? You don't have this kind of slow human body that's, you know, trying to get ambling from one location to another. Like, oh, I got to go over to that hilltop. You know, that's going to take me 30 minutes to walk over there. Well, forget that. Just, you know, sit in a chair with your drone and get your drone over there.
Yeah.
And so you can take so many photos so quickly, unique perspectives, a whole different kind of storytelling. So there's a whole lesson on that. And then it ends with what I think is a very good lesson on drone videography. Not just how to get good shots, but how to edit them and how to do storytelling. I think I've had a few drone videos go viral with millions of views, a couple of them. And so, and I've made mistakes along the way. I'm very honest, and I say, look, just because you can take good drone videos doesn't mean you're a good drone editor. I don't think I'm that good. Like, maybe you want to work with a professional editor, but I do give you basics if you want to edit your own photos and things to avoid. And then the last one is the most boring lesson of all, I'll be honest. It's all about rules and regulations, so you don't get arrested.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of arrested, we'll get a bookend for a second. Is there a police force at Burning Man?
Kind of, yes, but they're not aggro. As long as you're behaving, you know, which almost everyone is, you're fine. Yeah. You know, and it's such a, you don't get like, I think what they're looking for, which I've never seen any of it there in eight years, is like the opioids, you know, like meth or heroin or that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Because I think one reason that stuff doesn't make it out there, because people that are on that, they just can't get their act together enough to make it out to the desert for a week.
Yeah, yeah.
They might be looking for like giant bags of pot or something, right? But no one really carries that kind of stuff around. They're basically there just to kind of act as a threat because it's federal land. And even though like pot is legal in Nevada, that happens to be on federal land. So they kind of make a show of force out there. But they're mostly there just to protect you. There's rangers. Sometimes people do have problems, you know. Sometimes people get dehydrated. All kinds of things can happen out there. So they're really mostly there to protect you.
Yeah, cool. I'll take. We got like a couple of minutes left, so I got one question here, and maybe my team can grab one more. But Andrea is wondering, which do you prefer, Flickr or SmugMug? And do you like both for different reasons, or not like either of them? Just your thoughts on Flickr and SmugMug.
Yeah, good question. By the way, I apologize to all the unanswered questions. I realize that my answers are both long-winded and meandering.
You cover a lot of bases, though. That's okay.
Yeah, I apologize for that. So if your question didn't get answered, you can come at. We have a group, a Facebook group, and I'll be happy to answer them over there. Maybe Stu, you can drop it on. It's called Becoming an Artist on Facebook. It's a private group, but we'll let you in. And I'll take time to give at least quick answers on there. Cool. So SmugMug versus Flickr. I love them both. I like SmugMug better. Okay, I keep my portfolio on SmugMug. I have 4 portfolios. I have my main portfolio, which is my favorite photos, and I kind of put my favorite one towards the top of that. I have 1,000 photos in my portfolio, which is ridiculous. I'm not saying that every shot I take is like a portfolio shot. It's just stuff I like. I think it's interesting. Okay. So I have my main portfolio, then I have my Burning Man portfolio, which is my favorite Burning Man shots over the past 8 years. Then I have one called Portraits and People, you know, everything from Papua New Guinea to Antarctica. And then I have cities, because I like city photography. So those are kind of my 4 categories. And I love SmugMug. It's just fast. We actually thought we reevaluate this every year because, you know, we just always want the best experience for people that are looking at the photos. and like we looked at Wix and all these other ones, and just none of them load that fast. You know, SmugMug has some kind of mojo going on, and I think it's great for people to have, even if you don't feel like you're a good photographer and you're just getting started. I think it's very important for everyone to have a portfolio and just, you know, put 50 photos up there and just rank them. Okay, so you have your top 50 and put your favorite 5 in the top 5, and then they get a little worse, and just barely enough to make it in there, right? Yeah. And then every 3 months, all right, upload another 10 that you think are winners, and then go kind of resort them, right? Because over time, you're going to start to realize what kind of photographer you are. No one can tell what kind of photographer you are by looking at one photo. But as they scroll through them, they kind of get a sense of the shape of what their voice is. And you may not know what your voice is, but if you build a portfolio, you'll accidentally figure out your voice. As far as Flickr goes, we do upload a photo every day on Flickr, although I'm not that active on it anymore. We still put up 1 or 2 photos a day. It's just sort of an automated process, but I don't have time to get in and respond to comments on there, which I feel bad about, but I'm only one dude.
Yeah, I hear you. The final, thanks for that, by the way. We're excited. SmugMug's actually partnering with us in this sale in a couple cool ways. So it's fun to feel like our family is widening and becoming deeper and stronger together. Fight this fight. All right, so one final question. Actually, we took a poll of everyone who joined us saying, what would you like to hear from Trey today? And the majority of the poll respondents said they want to learn how to make really great travel photos. So I know that's a really broad question. We have covered some of those things already, but when you think about, and I know you've written about it all a lot, but when you think about you're preparing for a trip and you know you're going to be on the road, you might be doing the solo trip or traveling with family or workmates. How do you go about saying, okay, I want to make sure that I come back with really great travel photos?
I would suggest that you definitely don't do what's obvious, right? Don't try to take like the best postcard photo ever. Like let's say you get a great, I mean, I hate to use the Eiffel Tower as an example.
Are you saying you need to ignore your Pinterest board?
No, my Pinterest board is good because I shows stuff that you're not sure what it is, or it's from a angle.
Okay.
So yeah, don't try to beat the best postcard shot. Okay, like here's a good example. There's tunnel view in Yosemite, right? And I find this to be a little bit of a weak. I don't mean to. I'm not trying to be insulting, but I'm trying to be objective. Kind of a weak thing for photographers to do is they go and they just kind of play photography bingo, right? And they get the same shots that everybody else does, okay? I think that's okay if you're learning and practicing your craft and like, I'm gonna see if I can get the same kind of photo that so-and-so did, the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre or, you know, tunnel view or whatever. But it's just obvious. It's obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
You got, to make a interesting photo, you have to do what is not obvious, okay? It's too easy. So counterintuitively, to make an interesting photo, you have to you know, confuse the information. You kind of have to confound the viewer. You have to add mysteries into your photo so you don't know what's going on. But enough clues in there that their brain can put it together. If you think about it, I guess my answer for a good travel photo is the same as any other kind of photo. Think about your personal activity. Woo, excuse me. Your personal activity on Instagram, okay? So you're scrolling through Instagram, you're looking at photos. You look at it, like, hey, nice photo. You look at it for 2 seconds, like, okay, I get it. You go on, okay, 1 second, I get it. You can grok it really quick, right? Every now and then, you come to a photo and you stop. You look at it for like 9 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Most of that is like you're trying to figure out, like, what am I seeing here? You know, I'm seeing something familiar. And if over time they can kind of figure this out, like, oh, I see what's going on, you know, and then you realize, like, oh, is this Paris? It could be Paris. It It could be. It's definitely a foreign place. It doesn't feel like something I've ever seen before. It has a strange feel to it. There's this strangeness. There's a weirdness to it. Those are the ones that are the most interesting, right? Mm-hmm. And all cameras today, even cell phone cameras, they're so good that a shot can be very literal. Like you've explained everything to them, right? You think about it like anything in life, like let's say dating, right? And you're guys always like the girls that are a little mysterious, you know? And then girls, like a guy, let's say like a girl likes a guy, and like he just tells you everything. He just like makes everything so literal. But if you're a little mysterious, they're like, oh, what's going on with him? Yeah. And it's the same way with photos and anything, right? So just don't, and the thing is that when you get into travel photography, you look at other travel photos, a lot of them are obvious. And people confuse their wanderlust with a good photo because maybe you see, and let me think of an interesting place like, oh my gosh, it doesn't matter. Like let's say New York City. Like I've always wanted to go to New York City, and so many people do. And so they see some of the classic shots in New York City. And so they kind of confuse like their desire to go to New York City and kind of experience that big city life with the picture. But there's so many amazing shots all over New York City. So don't confuse your desire to go to a place with some image that's been locked in your mind since you were a kid. Yeah. With the actual place. Find stuff that no one else has found and make a little bit of a confusing photo, and you will accidentally delight the viewer.
That's awesome. Good answer. I thought I was going to hang you out to dry on that one.
No. I got answers for everything.
Clearly.
I have everything in life figured out. Trust me. I don't make any mistakes. Everything goes smoothly in my life. I promise.
Oh, right? It's simple. Life is simple. Well, thanks
life is a nonstop train wreck where you're just trying to keep it on the rails.
Man. Well, thanks for hanging out for the hour and handling the ebbs and flows of our questions, both from me and from our community. And the 5-day deal photography bundle gets going in a couple of days. Thrilled to have you and your team involved. It's a remarkable thing, and we don't take a moment of your trust and partnership for granted. So grateful for the time and for all you guys have done for us and our charity partners. So thank you.
You bet. It's my pleasure. You guys keep kicking butt, and we'll always stay your partners. And thanks again to everyone out there that participates in the 5-day deal. Feel free to ask any questions that you want to us. We're here to help you out along with their team. It's not a fixed sum game. We're all in this thing together.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thanks for being part of our family. And for those of you that joined us, thank you for your questions. Thanks for listening. We've got these questions captured, so things that went unanswered, I'll talk to Trey and the team about, and we'll talk about it later. But everyone, thank you so much, Trey. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the web.
All right. Awesome possum.
Bye. All right. Take care. Bye, everyone. Thank you.